Ted Bundy, the serial killer who fooled the world. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. His mother, Eleanor Louise Caldwell, was a 22-year-old unmarried woman who faced the stigma of raising a child out of wedlock in post-war America. In order to protect both herself and her son from societal scorn, she gave birth at the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers, a discreet facility designed for women in her position. Ted's father was never officially identified. Speculation has followed for decades, with rumors pointing to a sailor, a war veteran, or even, according to darker whispers, his grandfather, Samuel Cowell. But none of these claims were ever confirmed, and Ted himself offered conflicting stories throughout his life. To the outside world, Bundy was raised believing that his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his sister. Samuel Cowell, a violent, domineering man, ran the household in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where Ted spent his earliest years. Samuel was known to be abusive toward his wife and children, prone to rages, and openly racist. Eleanor, known as Louise, eventually reclaimed Ted as her son, moving with him to Tacoma, Washington, where she married Johnny Bundy, a hospital cook. Johnny Bundy legally adopted Ted, giving him his now infamous surname. Despite Johnny's best efforts to be a father, Ted remained distant. He often resented Johnny for his modest income and lack of sophistication. From a young age, Ted displayed the duality that would later define him: polite, shy, and intelligent in public, yet cold, calculating, and secretive in private. Bundy was academically gifted and socially awkward. At Woodrow Wilson High School in Tacoma, he excelled in class but struggled to connect with peers. He was particularly sensitive about his background. Questions about his parentage and family history often left him withdrawn and defensive. Outside of school, Bundy showed troubling tendencies. He was caught peeping into windows, rifling through neighbors' belongings, and stealing items he didn't need. Yet he was clever enough to avoid serious consequences. In many ways, Ted was already practicing the art of living two lives, appearing respectable, while nurturing dark impulses in secret. By the mid-1960s, Bundy enrolled at the University of Puget Sound, later transferring to the University of Washington in Seattle. There he studied psychology, a field that fascinated him both academically and personally. Professors remembered him as articulate, intelligent, and seemingly empathetic. During this time, Bundy began dating Stephanie Brooks, a pseudonym used in multiple sources to protect her privacy. Stephanie was from a wealthy California family, elegant, poised, and everything Ted desired. Their relationship was formative. Stephanie represented the life Ted wanted but could not sustain: upper-class sophistication, stability, and acceptance. When she eventually broke off their relationship, citing his lack of direction and ambition, Bundy was devastated. The rejection fueled a deep resentment toward women who represented status and beauty, women he both desired and despised. Bundy learned to cultivate a mask of charm. He dressed well, spoke eloquently, and volunteered in political campaigns. By the early 1970s, he worked for the Washington State Republican Party and even served at a Seattle crisis hotline center alongside Ann Rule, who would later write the definitive book about him, The Stranger Beside Me. At the hotline, Bundy was patient and reassuring, saving lives with calm words over the phone. Ann Rule later recalled how she never suspected the darkness beneath his smile. This ability to appear caring while hiding monstrous impulses became Bundy's most dangerous tool. In 1973, he re-enrolled at the University of Washington Law School, determined to prove himself. His confidence grew, and so did his predatory behavior. He began stalking women at night, watching them from the shadows, studying their habits. The first confirmed murders attributed to Bundy began in 1974 in the Seattle area. January 4, 1974, Karen Sparks survived. Bundy broke into the basement apartment of 18-year-old Karen Sparks, a University of Washington student. He brutally attacked her as she slept, bludgeoning her with a metal rod and sexually assaulting her. Karen survived but suffered permanent brain damage and physical injuries. February 1, 1974, Linda and Healy disappeared. A month later, Bundy escalated. He entered the university district home of 21-year-old Linda Ann Healy, a broadcasting student known for her bright personality. Bundy bludgeoned her, dressed her body in jeans and boots, and carried her out into the night. Her skull and jawbone were later discovered on Taylor Mountain. That spring and summer, the disappearances accelerated. Women vanished from campuses, streets, and even broad daylight. March 12, Donna Gail Manson, 19, disappeared from the Evergreen State College. April 17, Susan Rimcourt, 18, vanished while walking to a meeting at Central Washington State College. May 6, Roberta Bobby Parks, 22, was last seen leaving her dormitory at Oregon State University. June 1, Brenda Ball, 22, disappeared after leaving a tavern in Burien, Washington. June 11, Georgianne Hawkins, 18, vanished while walking between fraternity houses near the University of Washington. Witnesses described a man with his arm in a sling or using crutches, asking women to help him carry books or load items into a Volkswagen Beetle. The description matched Bundy perfectly. Bundy's boldness reached a shocking climax on July 14, 1974, at Lake Sammamish State Park, a crowded recreational area near Seattle. That day, 2 women disappeared within hours. Janice Ott, 23, a probation caseworker. Denise Naslund, 19, a college student. Witnesses reported a handsome young man, wearing a cast and introducing himself as Ted, asking women to help load his sailboat onto his car. Several women turned him down, but Ott and Naslund did not return. Their remains were later found on Taylor Mountain, alongside other victims. This was the moment Ted Bundy's double life cracked open. He had been sloppy. Dozens of witnesses remembered his face, his name, and his car. In late 1974, Bundy moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, to attend law school at the University of Utah. The disappearances followed him. October 2, 1974, Nancy Wilcox, 16, vanished in Holiday, Utah. October 18, Melissa Smith, 17, daughter of the local police chief, disappeared. Her body was found 9 days later. October 31, Laura Aim, 17, vanished on Halloween night. Her beaten and strangled body was discovered on Thanksgiving. Bundy crisscrossed states, leaving bodies in Utah, Idaho, and Colorado. His modus operandi was becoming clear: abduction, bludgeoning, strangulation, and post-mortem sexual assault. Yet Bundy still maintained his image as a law student, political volunteer, and boyfriend. He even rekindled his relationship with Stephanie Brooks in 1974, only to cruelly end it by abruptly cutting off contact, a chilling echo of his need for control and revenge. Bundy's arrogance grew, but so did suspicion. In November 1974, police in Utah released a composite sketch based on witness descriptions from the Lake Sammamish abductions. The sketch bore a striking resemblance to Ted Bundy. His Volkswagen Beetle was also reported by witnesses. Friends, former girlfriends, and even his co-worker Ann Rule submitted his name to police tip lines. Yet investigators were overwhelmed with thousands of tips. Bundy's name was buried in the pile. Bundy's luck ran out on August 16, 1975. A police officer in Granger, Utah, stopped his suspicious Volkswagen Beetle. Inside, they found burglary tools, handcuffs, an ice pick, ski mask, crowbar, but no evidence directly tying him to the murders. For now, Bundy was charged with possession of burglary tools, but investigators were beginning to connect the dots. By the end of 1975, skeletal remains of several victims had been discovered in the mountains of Utah, Colorado, and Washington. The horror was undeniable. A serial killer was on the loose, and suspicion was closing in on Ted Bundy. By late 1975, the walls were closing in on Bundy. Though his arrest in Utah had seemed minor, investigators in multiple states began piecing together evidence. Witnesses at Lake Sammamish had given the name Ted and described a tan Volkswagen Beetle. That car, seized after his arrest, became the key to unlocking Bundy's crimes. Inside, police found hair samples later matched to victims Melissa Smith and Carol Daranch. When investigators examined his gas receipts, they aligned with the dates and locations of women's disappearances across Utah and Colorado. The strongest living witness was Carol Daranch, a 19-year-old woman who had narrowly escaped Bundy's clutches. On November 8, 1974, Bundy had posed as a police officer at a Salt Lake City mall, telling Daranch her car had been broken into. He lured her into his Volkswagen, where he attempted to handcuff her. But Daranch fought back fiercely, managing to escape. Her testimony would later play a pivotal role in his conviction. In February 1976, Bundy stood trial in Utah for the attempted kidnapping of Carol Daranch. He arrived in court clean-shaven, wearing a suit, charming the press and insisting on his innocence. Despite his confident demeanor, the evidence was damning. Daranch bravely testified, describing the attack in detail. The jury deliberated just a few hours before finding him guilty of aggravated kidnapping. He was sentenced to 1 to 15 years at the Utah State Prison. But Bundy's story was far from over. While he served time in Utah, investigators in Colorado pursued charges for the disappearance of Karen Campbell, a 23-year-old nurse who vanished from a Snowmass hotel in January 1975. Her body had been found weeks later in a nearby field. In October 1976, Bundy was charged with Campbell's murder and extradited to Colorado. By now, he was no longer just a suspect. He was a serial killer under investigation in multiple states. Bundy, ever calculating, spotted weaknesses in the legal system. During pretrial hearings in June 1977, he was granted access to the law library in the Aspen courthouse. Left unshackled and unguarded, Bundy took his chance. He jumped from a second-story window and fled into the mountains. For 6 days, he evaded a massive manhunt, surviving on stolen food and outdoor shelters. Eventually, exhausted and disheveled, he was recaptured while attempting to steal a car. Bundy had tasted freedom, and he wasn't done trying. Transferred to the Garfield County Jail in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, Bundy plotted again. He studied the building's layout, dieted to lose weight, and carved a hole in the ceiling of his cell. On December 30, 1977, he squeezed through the ceiling into a guard's apartment, changed into civilian clothes, and walked out the front door. This time, he vanished for good. Bundy made his way to Tallahassee, Florida, arriving in early January 1978 under the alias Chris Hagen. He rented a room near Florida State University and tried to blend in. But his compulsions returned. In the early hours of January 15, 1978, Bundy committed one of the most infamous crimes in American history, the Chi Omega sorority house attacks. Around 2:45 a.m., Bundy broke into the house and launched a frenzy of violence. Margaret Bowman, 21, was bludgeoned and strangled to death. Lisa Levy, 20, was beaten, strangled, and sexually assaulted. Karen Chandler, 21, and Kathy Kleiner, 20, were brutally attacked but survived with severe injuries. Only a few blocks away, Bundy attacked Cheryl Thomas, 21, bludgeoning her in her apartment and leaving her with permanent injuries. The brutality shocked the nation. Unlike his earlier calculated abductions, this was reckless, frenzied, and public. Bundy fled Tallahassee, stealing cars and traveling across Florida. On February 9, 1978, he kidnapped and murdered Kimberly Leach, 12, from her junior high school in Lake City. Her body was later found in a pig shed. Just days later, on February 15, 1978, Bundy was pulled over in Pensacola, Florida, driving a stolen car. He resisted arrest but was subdued. When officers confirmed his identity, they knew they had captured one of America's most wanted killers. Bundy faced two major trials in Florida. 1. Chi Omega Trial 1979. Bundy insisted on acting as his own attorney, cross-examining witnesses, and playing to the cameras. The trial became a national spectacle, the first to be broadcast live on television. Despite his theatrics, the evidence was overwhelming. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to death by electrocution. 2. Kimberly Leach Trial 1980. Again representing himself, Bundy faced the testimony of school staff, witnesses, and forensic evidence. He was convicted and received a second death sentence. Throughout his trials, Bundy manipulated the media with his charm and confidence. Women wrote him love letters. Admirers packed the courtroom. His relationship with Carol Ann Boone, a former coworker, became tabloid fodder. She testified on his behalf, smuggled money to him, and even married him during court proceedings. In 1982, she gave birth to a daughter, believed to be Bundy's child. Yet beneath the spectacle, Bundy's victims and their families endured the pain of his crimes being sensationalized. As execution dates loomed in the 1980s, Bundy finally began to confess, piecemeal and calculated. He admitted to at least 30 murders across 7 states, though investigators believe the true number could be far higher. His confessions revealed a chilling pattern: manipulation, abduction, rape, murder, and necrophilia. He provided details of dumping grounds in Washington and Utah, confirming what investigators had long suspected. Yet Bundy never revealed everything. His confessions were bargaining chips, designed to delay his death sentence. On January 24, 1989, after years of appeals, Ted Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Crowds gathered outside, cheering, holding signs that read, "Burn Bundy, burn." Inside the prison, Bundy's final words were reported simply as, "I'd like to give my love to my family and friends." Moments later, the current surged through his body. America's most notorious serial killer was dead. Ted Bundy's case changed the way America understood serial killers. His ability to appear normal, handsome, educated, articulate, challenged the stereotype of the obvious predator. He became the subject of countless books, documentaries, and academic studies. But beyond the myth and media, his legacy is one of devastation. Dozens of young women's lives were stolen, their families left with grief that never faded. Survivors bore physical and emotional scars for life. Bundy remains a chilling reminder that evil can hide behind a charming smile, a neat suit, and a gentle voice on a hotline. As we close the dark chapters of Ted Bundy's life, we are left with a story that is as terrifying as it is unforgettable. Bundy wasn't just a serial killer, he was a master manipulator, a predator who hid behind charm and intelligence to conceal a capacity for unimaginable cruelty. His name remains etched in the annals of American crime, not for who he was, but for what he did, the lives stolen, the futures destroyed, and the families left in eternal grief. If you found this story gripping, make sure to subscribe to our channel True Crime Spectrum for more deep dives into the world's most haunting true crime cases. Don't forget to like this video, share it with others who follow true crime, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next investigation. Because in the end, remembering these stories is not about glorifying the killers, but about honoring the victims and learning from history.